What is becoming clearer with each new discovery is that the people of descending Treta Yuga knew and used all the discoveries considered key to the inevitable start of civilization, long before the rise of Sumeria in 3300 BC, and yet consistently chose instead to live lightly on the earth. Why? We think the reason may be that the mental capabilities of Treta Yuga man made what is today considered civilization unnecessary and unattractive. Treta Yuga man saw the systematic physical exploitation of the earth for food and shelter as the lower, not the higher way of life. Treta Yuga man clearly knew how to grow food, domesticate animals, build settlements, make pottery. In addition, there is evidence of basic dentistry in Mehrgar in 6000 BC, and a map of the world by 5000 BC. But Treta Yuga man simply didn't feel compelled to use his practical knowledge, as the theory of the Neolithic Revolution would have it, to create civilization as we define it. Instead, he used his knowledge as he chose, where he chose, but otherwise continued to live lightly on the earth. It is only as Treta Yuga man's mental abilities waned in the last centuries of descending Treta Yuga, when he could no longer rely on using his advanced abilities to provide his needs, that we see him turn to widespread agriculture and the city structure as an alternative. It isn't until the Sandhis, or transition periods at the end of Treta Yuga and the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, that the famous ancient cities sprang up around the world. Ur, Sumer, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Memphis, and South America's Caral. As Treta Yuga ended, a new Dwapara Yuga pattern emerged. The knowledge embedded in the Vedas indicates advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics. The Piri-Reis map indicates knowledge of spherical trigonometry, longitudes and latitudes, and suggests world travel. Cultural and linguistic evidence in North and South America indicates that such travel was common and continuous. The megalithic yard and other ancient measures indicate a high degree of sophistication and knowledge of the size and shape of the earth. And some early cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, show clear evidence of thoughtful planning. It appears that civilization, or at least what we think of as civilization, was born not from a serendipitous revolutionary leap forward, but from deliberate choice resulting from man's changing awareness and motivation as he descended into Dwapara Yuga. Beginning with the Sandhi, or transition period from Treta Yuga to Dwapara Yuga in 3400 BC, man began to rely more on the material world to meet his needs. But he did so with much greater awareness and knowledge than the current linear theory of development can explain. Instead of Stone Age people with no mental development pulling themselves up from the mud, we see instead intelligent people accepting a more material lifestyle and approaching it with system, order, and method, as is evident from their knowledge of math, physics, geodetic standards, geography, and especially energy. No single artifact more clearly reveals the presence of advanced knowledge in the ancient past than the Great Pyramid of Giza. No single ancient artifact more clearly highlights the transition from descending Treta Yuga to descending Dwapara Yuga than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And no single ancient artifact turns the linear conception of human development on its head more thoroughly than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Mainstream theory holds that the Egyptian civilization began slightly later than Sumeria's rise in 3300 BC. Egypt is commonly thought to have risen to prominence when Menes united Upper and Lower Egypt in 3100 BC. Prior to that, mainstream theory holds, many small and separate groups of people lived along the Nile, using Neolithic Stone Age tools and surviving with rudimentary agricultural practices. After Menes united Egypt, mainstream theory asks us to believe, people who had formerly eked out their precarious Stone Age lives along the Nile learned in just a few centuries how to build what was then, and what remained for the next 5 millennia, the most sophisticated structure in the world. And after having built it, managed to achieve nothing like it ever again. Mainstream archaeologists treat the Great Pyramid like the proverbial elephant in the room, as though it weren't there. Or, if they do acknowledge it, they minimize its importance, transform an elephant into a mouse. The Caliph al-Ma'mun in the 9th century AD spent the better part of a year exploring the Great Pyramid. Nor has interest waned. A recent online search produced over 6 million matches for the Great Pyramid. It is surely the most measured structure on Earth. Sir Flinders Petrie spent the best part of 1880 through 1882 meticulously and scrupulously measuring every line, plane, and surface of the Great Pyramid. Measurements still regarded as reliable. Sir Howard Weiss visited Egypt in the early 1800s and ended up so intrigued with the Great Pyramid that he remained there for decades. Today, his methods of exploration are an archaeologist's worst nightmare. He was enamored of using gunpowder to blast his way into suspected passages, but he is credited with establishing some of the first scientific theories about the Great Pyramid, many of which hold sway even today. His work and passion for his subject made him, in scholarly eyes, the first Egyptologist. While Weiss may be the first in the line of those who in modern times have devoted themselves to studying the Great Pyramid, the line is steadily growing longer. Peter Tompkins' seminal book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid, was among the first to present newer, alternative theories of the purpose and construction of the Great Pyramid. And today there would be nothing left to say on the subject. However, the more the Great Pyramid is measured and studied, the more discoveries are made, and the more questions arise. The standard theory that it was built using only copper tools, wood, rope, and sweat as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu is still around, but it is less and less able to answer the questions that new evidence gives rise to. New theories abound as to how and why it was built and what it was used for, from the mystical to the astronomical, from the alien to the practical. But one theme informs almost all the new theories. The Great Pyramid could not have been built by primitive people just out of the Stone Age. It is simply too precisely built to have been constructed with copper and stone chisels, and its design is simply too sophisticated to have been conceived from the knowledge ascribed to the people of that era.